The dust hung thick in the summer air of 1876 as Beatrice Porter clutched her 6-month-old daughter tighter to her hip, her eyes fixed on the horizon where the road disappeared into the endless Texas plains. Blood trickled from a cut above her brow, her threadbare dress torn at the shoulder, evidence of the life she'd just fled. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly as she stood rooted to the spot, listening for hoofbeats that would signal her husband had discovered her escape. When instead she heard the steady approach of a wagon from the opposite direction, hope and fear warred within her chest. Finn Ingram pulled back on the reins of his team, slowing the wagon as he approached the lone figure on the road. His weathered hat cast a shadow over keen blue eyes that took in the young woman's disheveled appearance, the infant on her hip, and the small bundle at her feet that likely contained everything she owned in the world. "Madam," he said, voice gentle but firm. "This ain't no place to be standing. Not with that little one in the heat." Beatrice swallowed hard, her throat parched from thirst and fear. "I'm waiting for the stagecoach to Ruby City." Finn shook his head slowly, removing his hat to reveal dark hair streaked with bits of premature silver. "Stage ain't due for 3 days. You'll not survive out here that long." The baby whimpered, turning her face into her mother's neck. Beatrice bit her lip, desperation flashing across her face. "I can take you," he offered, replacing his hat. His eyes caught the bruises peeking out from beneath her sleeve, and something hardened in his expression. "You'll ride beside me from now on, at least until we reach town." Beatrice hesitated, studying the stranger's face. His jaw was strong beneath several days of stubble, but his eyes were kind, kinder than any she'd seen in years. "I don't take charity," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "It ain't charity to help a mother and child," Finn replied, climbing down from the wagon. "It's what decent folk do." He picked up her small bundle without asking and extended his other hand to her. "Name's Finn Ingram. I've got a ranch 10 miles outside of Ruby City." "Beatrice," she replied, taking his hand after a moment's hesitation. "Beatrice Porter. And this is Clara." Finn helped her into the wagon, making sure she was settled before climbing up beside her. As he flicked the reins to set the horses in motion, Beatrice fought back tears of relief, terror, and exhaustion. "Thank you," she said softly, barely audible over the creaking of the wagon. Finn nodded, eyes fixed on the road ahead. "Everybody needs a hand sometimes, Mrs. Porter." "Miss," she corrected quickly. Just Miss Porter now." He cast a sideways glance at her bruised face, but asked no questions. "Well then, Miss Porter, we'll be in Ruby City by nightfall. You got people there?" Beatrice looked down at her sleeping daughter, gently brushing a wisp of hair from her forehead. "No, not anymore." Finn nodded again, thoughtful. "Town's got a decent boarding house. Mrs. Winters is strict, but fair. She might have work for you too." "I can cook," Beatrice offered quickly. "And so, I'm good with numbers too." "That's so." Finn's expression lightened. "Ruby City's growing. Folks always need skills like that." As the wagon rolled on, Beatrice felt the first tentative thread of hope she'd experienced in years. The baby nestled against her, soothed by the gentle rocking motion. She studied her rescuer from the corner of her eye, noting his strong, calloused hands and the way his shoulders carried the burden of a lifetime of hard work. "What takes you to Ruby City, Mr. Ingram?" she asked, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between them. "Supplies. Feed for the cattle, seeds for planting, letters to post." He flashed her a brief smile. "And it's just Finn, if you don't mind." "Finn," she repeated softly. The name felt right on her tongue, honest and straightforward like the man himself. "Do you make this trip often?" "Every couple weeks," he replied. "Ranch keeps me busy most days, but a man can't live on just beef and what grows in his garden." Beatrice nodded, understanding the simple truth of his words. "Clara and I won't be a burden for long. Once we reach town, I'll find our way." "Never said you were a burden," Finn replied, his tone gentle but firm. "Life out here's hard enough without folks turning their backs on each other." The wagon hit a rut in the road, jostling them. Finn's hand shot out instinctively to steady her, his touch brief but careful. Beatrice felt color rise to her cheeks, and used to such consideration. As they continued their journey, Beatrice gradually began to relax, lulled by the rhythm of the wagon and Finn's occasional commentary about the landscape. He pointed out landmarks and told her about the town. They were approaching a growing settlement that had sprung up first around silver mines and now served the surrounding ranches and farms. When Clara woke fussing, Finn stopped the wagon without being asked, allowing Beatrice to tend to her daughter's needs in the shade of a lone cottonwood tree. He kept a respectful distance, his back turned as he checked the horses' harnesses. "She's beautiful," he commented when they resumed their journey, the baby now cooing contentedly. "Got your eyes." "Thank you," Beatrice replied, surprised by the simple observation. She'd spent so long hearing only criticism that genuine compliments felt foreign to her ears. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon when Finn pointed to a cluster of buildings in the distance. "That's Ruby City. Not much to look at, but it's a good place. Good people, mostly." Beatrice's heart quickened. A new place meant new beginnings, but also new uncertainties. "Do you think I'll find work quickly?" "I reckon so," Finn nodded. "Town's growing fast. Folks are always looking for help." He paused, seeming to consider something. "If Mrs. Winters can't place you right away, I could use some help at the ranch. Just until you get settled." Beatrice stiffened. "I told you, I don't take charity. And I'm not offering any," he replied evenly. "My housekeeper left to marry a miner last month. Place is a disaster, and I can't cook worth a damn. It'd be a fair trade work for room and board for you and the little one." The offer hung in the air between them as Ruby City drew closer. Beatrice weighed her options carefully. She had precious little money, barely enough for a week at a boarding house. Working for Finn would give her time to save, to plan their future more carefully. "I'll think on it," she finally said. Finn nodded, respecting her need to maintain some control over her circumstances. "That's fair enough." As they entered the town, Beatrice observed the bustling main street with wide eyes. A general store, saloon, bank, and various other establishments lined the dirt road. People moved with purpose, nodding to Finn as he guided the wagon toward a two-story building with a sign that read, "Winter's Boarding House." "Here we are," Finn announced, bringing the wagon to a stop. He jumped down and came around to help her, his hands strong and steady as he lifted her to the ground. Beatrice clutched Clara tightly, suddenly overwhelmed by the noise and activity after the quiet journey. Finn seemed to sense her unease. "Mrs. Winters is expecting me," he said, picking up Beatrice's small bundle. "Let me introduce you." The boarding house was neat and clean, with polished floors and simple furnishings. A stern-looking woman with iron gray hair appeared from a back room, her expression softening slightly when she saw Finn. "Mr. Ingram, right on time. Your supplies are ready." "Much obliged, Mrs. Winters." Finn removed his hat. "I've brought someone who needs a room. This is Miss Porter and her daughter Clara." Mrs. Winters's sharp eyes took in Beatrice's appearance, lingering briefly on her bruised face. Something like understanding passed between the two women. "I have a room at the back. Quieter for the baby," Mrs. Winters said. $2 a week, includes breakfast and supper." Beatrice's heart sank. At that rate, her meager savings wouldn't last long. "I'm looking for work as well. I can cook, clean, sew." Mrs. Winters pursed her lips. "I don't need help at present, but the dressmaker mentioned needing an assistant." "You can ask there tomorrow." Finn cleared his throat. "Miss Porter is considering a position at my ranch as well. As housekeeper." Mrs. Winters raised an eyebrow, her gaze moving between them. "Is she now?" "Well, that would be more suitable for a woman with a child than town work. Fewer prying eyes." Beatrice bristled slightly at the implication. "I haven't decided yet." "Of course not," Mrs. Winters replied smoothly. "You'll stay here tonight at least. Come, I'll show you the room." As Mrs. Winters led Beatrice toward the stairs, Finn called after her. "I'll be heading back to the ranch tomorrow morning. If you decide to accept my offer, I'll be at the general store around 9. Beatrice nodded, suddenly reluctant to part from the man who'd shown her such unexpected kindness. "Thank you for everything, Finn." "You're welcome, Miss Porter." He placed his hat back on his head. "Madam," he added with a nod to Mrs. Winters before taking his leave. The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a crib that Mrs. Winters said had belonged to her own children, and a basin for washing. After settling Clara in the crib, Beatrice sat on the edge of the bed, exhaustion finally catching up with her. "There's stew downstairs when you're ready," Mrs. Winters said from the doorway. She hesitated, then added, Mr. Ingram is a good man. Keeps to himself mostly, but honest as the day is long. If you're considering his offer. I don't know him, Beatrice replied softly. No, but I do. Known him since he came to these parts 5 years ago. Never had a bad word about him. Mrs. Winters studied her for a moment. Whatever you're running from, Miss Porter, it won't follow you to Finn Ingram's ranch. He wouldn't allow it. With that, the older woman left Beatrice to her thoughts. She looked down at her sleeping daughter, brushing a finger gently across her soft cheek. Clara deserved safety, stability, a chance at a better life than the one they'd fled. By morning, Beatrice had made her decision. After a simple breakfast, she thanked Mrs. Winters and walked with Clara to the general store. Finn was just loading the last of his supplies when she approached. I'll accept your offer, she said without preamble. But I want to be clear, this is a business arrangement. I work for my keep and Clara's, nothing more. Finn studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Agreed. I'll draw up proper terms if you like. That won't be necessary. Beatrice adjusted Clara on her hip. I trust your word. Something like respect flickered in Finn's eyes. Then we'd best get going. It's a long ride back to the ranch. As they left Ruby City behind, Beatrice felt a strange mixture of trepidation and relief. She was placing her trust in a stranger, but somehow, sitting beside Finn Ingram on the wagon seat felt more like heading towards something than running away. The Ingram ranch came into view as they crested a gentle hill, a modest but well-maintained house, a large barn, several outbuildings, and corrals with horses and cattle visible in the distance. A stream ran along the eastern edge of the property, with cottonwood trees providing shade. It's not much, Finn said, misinterpreting her silence as disappointment. But it's quiet. Safe. It's beautiful, Beatrice replied honestly, taking in the peaceful scene. How many acres? 420. Got 30 head of cattle, 8 horses including these 2, some chickens, and a milk cow. Pride colored his voice. Started with nothing but the land 5 years ago. You've done well for yourself, Beatrice observed. Hard work pays off eventually. Finn guided the wagon toward the house. Usually have a ranch hand or 2 helping, but they're out on the North Range this week, moving the herd to fresh pasture. As they pulled up to the house, Beatrice felt a flutter of nerves. This would be her home now, at least for a time. Finn helped her down from the wagon, then carried her bundle and some supplies to the porch. Let me show you around, he offered, opening the front door. The house was indeed a disaster, as he'd warned. Not dirty exactly, but chaotic, dishes stacked haphazardly, clothes draped over furniture, papers scattered on every surface. Beatrice suppressed a smile at Finn's embarrassed expression. Told you it was bad, he muttered. I've seen worse, she assured him, already mentally organizing how she would tackle each room. The tour revealed a surprisingly spacious home, a sitting room, kitchen, and small study downstairs, with 3 bedrooms upstairs. Finn showed her to what would be her and Clara's room, a pleasant space with a double bed, dresser, and rocking chair by the window. This was meant to be for guests, but I've never had any stay overnight, he explained. The room across the hall is mine, and the one at the end of the corridor was going to be. He trailed off, then simply said, It's empty. Beatrice noticed the shadow that crossed his face, but didn't pry. Everyone had parts of their past they preferred to keep private. This will be perfect, she said instead, setting Clara on the bed where the baby immediately began exploring the quilt with curious fingers. I'll bring up your things and get the rest of the supplies unloaded, Finn said. Take your time settling in. Kitchen stocked, so help yourself to whatever you need. Left alone with Clara, Beatrice sank onto the bed beside her daughter, allowing herself a moment to absorb everything that had happened. Just yesterday, she'd been standing on a dusty road with nowhere to go. Now she had a roof over their heads, work to do, and a chance to build something new. We'll be all right here, Clara, she whispered, pressing a kiss to her daughter's head. For now, at least. The first days at the ranch fell into a comfortable rhythm. Beatrice rose early, prepared breakfast, and worked through the house systematically, bringing order to the chaos while keeping Clara nearby. Finn spent his days tending to ranch chores, coming in for meals and occasionally checking on her progress with appreciative nods. On the 3rd morning, as she served breakfast, Finn cleared his throat. You don't have to do all this at once, you know. Pace yourself. I like having tasks to complete, Beatrice replied. pouring him coffee. It keeps my mind occupied. Finn seemed to understand what she wasn't saying. Well, the place hasn't looked this good since. Well, ever, I reckon. Thank you. She sat across from him, feeding Clara small bits of scrambled egg. I was thinking I might plant a vegetable garden. I noticed you don't have much beyond those potatoes and onions in the root cellar. That'd be fine. There's a patch around back that gets good sun. Meant to plant it myself, but never got around to it. He took a sip of coffee. I can ride into town next week for seeds if you make a list. I'd appreciate that. Beatrice hesitated, then added, Clara and I could come along. If that's all right. Finn's expression brightened. Course it is. Be good for you both to get out, see more than just these four walls. After breakfast, Finn headed out to the barn while Beatrice cleared the dishes. Through the window, she watched him working with one of the horses, his movements confident and gentle with the animal. There was something reassuring about his steadiness, his lack of pretense. The days stretched into weeks, and Beatrice found herself settling into life at the ranch with surprising ease. The work was hard but satisfying, and Finn proved to be a considerate employer, always making sure she had what she needed and never questioning her methods or decisions regarding the household. Their conversations gradually extended beyond the practical matters of running the ranch. During suppers, Finn would tell stories of his journey west from Pennsylvania, the struggles of establishing his ranch, the people he'd met along the way. In return, Beatrice shared carefully edited tales of her childhood in Missouri, her love of books, her dreams of one day opening a small shop of her own. She never mentioned her marriage, and Finn never asked, though she sometimes caught him looking at the fading bruises on her arms with a tightness around his mouth that spoke of carefully controlled anger. Clara thrived in the peaceful environment, growing stronger each day. She began crawling, exploring every corner of the house under Beatrice's watchful eye. Finn carved her a wooden horse, watching with undisguised delight as the baby clutched it in her tiny hands. She's got a good spirit, he observed one evening as Clara practiced pulling herself up on the furniture. Determined. Like her mother, Beatrice replied with a small smile. Finn's eyes met hers, warm with something she wasn't ready to name. Yes, exactly like her mother. The moment stretched between them, comfortable yet charged with unspoken possibilities, until Clara toppled over and broke the spell with her frustrated cries. It was during their planned trip to Ruby City that everything changed. The journey started pleasantly enough, with Clara fascinated by the passing landscape from her perch on Beatrice's lap. Finn pointed out landmarks, telling stories about the area that made Beatrice laugh, a rare sound that seemed to please him greatly. Ruby City was bustling with activity when they arrived. Finn helped them down from the wagon, his hand lingering on Beatrice's waist perhaps a moment longer than necessary. I need to stop by the bank first, he said. Then we can get those seeds and anything else you need. As they walked down the main street, Beatrice noticed people watching them with curious eyes. She realized how they must appear, a man, woman, and baby, looking for all the world like a family. The thought brought a blush to her cheeks that she hoped Finn wouldn't notice. At the general store, Beatrice was selecting seed packets when a rough voice from behind made her blood run cold. Well, if it ain't my darling wife. She turned slowly, clutching Clara tightly to her chest. Wade Porter stood in the doorway, his tall frame blocking the light, a twisted smile on his handsome face. You've led me on quite a chase, Beatrice, he said, stepping forward. Taking what's mine and running off like a thief in the night. She's my daughter, Beatrice whispered, backing away. My daughter, Wade corrected, his voice hardening. And you're my wife. Time to come home. No. Beatrice's voice was stronger now, fueled by months of newfound confidence. We're never coming back. Wade's face darkened as he advanced toward her. You don't have a choice in the matter, woman. Beatrice's back hit the counter, panic rising in her throat. Clara began to cry, sensing her mother's fear. Everything all right here? Finn's voice cut through the tension as he entered the store, packages under his arm. His eyes narrowed as he took in the scene. This doesn't concern you, mister, Wade said without looking away from Beatrice. Just collecting my wife and child. Finn set his packages down slowly, moving to stand between Beatrice and Wade. The lady doesn't seem interested in going with you. Wade's hand moved toward the gun at his hip. The lady doesn't have a say in the matter. In my experience, Finn replied evenly. Ladies always have a say. His own hand hovered near his belt, and Beatrice realized with a start that he was armed as well. Now, I suggest you walk away while you still can. For a tense moment, the two men stared at each other, the air crackling with potential violence. Then Wade's gaze flickered to the sheriff's office visible across the street, and he seemed to reconsider. This isn't over, he said to Beatrice. I'll be in town for a while. Think about what's best for the child. With a final glare at Finn, he backed out of the store. Beatrice's legs nearly gave out beneath her. Finn was at her side instantly, a steadying arm around her shoulders. You all right? He asked softly. She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Clara continued to cry, and Beatrice rocked her automatically, murmuring soothing words that she didn't truly feel. Let's get you both home, Finn said, his voice gentle but firm. He quickly paid for their purchases and ushered them to the wagon, keeping Beatrice close to his side, his eyes scanning the street constantly. The return journey was silent, Beatrice lost in her thoughts, fear and shame warring within her. When they reached the ranch, Finn helped her down with the same care as always, but there was a new tension in his movements. I'll put the horses up, he said. Go on inside. We'll talk when you're ready. Beatrice prepared a simple supper, her movements mechanical. After feeding Clara and putting her to bed, she returned to the kitchen to find Finn waiting at the table, 2 cups of coffee before him. I'm sorry, she said immediately, sitting across from him. I should have told you he might come looking for us. Yes, you should have, Finn agreed, pushing a cup toward her. But I understand why you didn't. Beatrice wrapped her hands around the warm cup, drawing strength from its solidity. He was charming when we met. Everyone thought so, my parents, our neighbors. It wasn't until after we were married that he changed. Or maybe he just stopped pretending. The bruises, Finn said quietly. It wasn't a question. Beatrice nodded, staring into her coffee. It got worse after Clara was born. He was disappointed she wasn't a son. Said it was my fault. Her voice caught. When he threatened Clara, I knew we had to leave. You did the right thing, Finn said firmly. But now he's found us. She finally looked up at him. I've brought trouble to your door. We should go. No. The word was simple but absolute. This is your home now. You and Clara belong here. The conviction in his voice brought tears to her eyes. He won't stop. He's a proud man, Finn. He'll see me leaving as an insult that needs avenging. Let him try. Finn's expression hardened. I fought off rustlers and claim jumpers to build this ranch. I can handle one angry husband. Ex-husband, Beatrice corrected quietly. I filed divorce papers before I left. That's why he's so angry I took his property and his pride in one stroke. Finn's eyebrows rose in surprise. That was brave. It was necessary, she replied. I couldn't let Clara grow up in that house, seeing what he did to me, learning that it was normal. She took a shaky breath. The judge granted it in absentia. Wade was always careful to be charming in public, but enough people had seen the bruises that the court believed me. So legally, you're free of him. Yes, but Wade doesn't respect laws any more than he respects women. She pushed her coffee away, suddenly exhausted. I should never have stayed in one place so long. I've put you at risk too. Beatrice. Finn reached across the table, his hand covering hers. I meant what I said. This is your home for as long as you want it to be. You and Clara aren't going anywhere unless it's what you choose. The warmth of his hand and the certainty in his voice loosened something in Beatrice's chest. For the first time since seeing Wade, she took a full breath. Thank you, she whispered. Finn squeezed her hand once before releasing it. We'll figure this out together. But right now, you should rest. That night, Beatrice lay awake long after Clara had fallen asleep, listening to every creak of the house, starting at each noise from outside. Around midnight, she heard Finn's door open, followed by his quiet footsteps on the stairs. Through her window, she watched him make a circuit of the property, rifle in hand, checking doors and windows before returning inside. The knowledge that he was standing guard allowed her to finally drift into uneasy sleep. Morning came with no sign of Wade, but the shadow of his appearance hung over the ranch. Finn was more subdued than usual at breakfast, his eyes frequently drifting to the window. I've asked my ranch hands to stay closer to the house for a while, he said as Beatrice cleared the dishes. Just as a precaution. She nodded, grateful for his foresight. I'll be more careful too. Keep Clara inside more. Don't let him take away your freedom, Finn advised. Just be aware. And don't go anywhere alone. The next few days passed in tense vigilance. Beatrice kept Clara close, jumping at unexpected sounds, while Finn seemed to find more reasons to work near the house rather than out on the range. His ranch hands, two brothers named Samuel and Jacob Hayes, took to carrying rifles as they went about their chores, eyeing strangers on the road with suspicion. It was on the fourth day after their encounter in town that Wade made his move. Beatrice was hanging laundry, Clara playing on a blanket nearby, when she spotted a rider approaching from the east. She recognized Wade's posture even at a distance and quickly gathered Clara, hurrying toward the house. Finn intercepted her halfway, emerging from the barn with a determined stride. "Get inside," he said quietly. "Lock the doors." Beatrice hesitated. "Finn, I won't let him hurt either of you," he promised. "Now go." From the window of the sitting room, Beatrice watched as Wade rode up to the front of the house, where Finn stood waiting, one hand resting casually on his holstered pistol. She couldn't hear their words, but she could see Wade's angry gestures and Finn's resolute stance. When Wade dismounted and took a threatening step forward, Finn didn't retreat. When Wade jabbed a finger into Finn's chest, Finn simply knocked his hand away. And when Wade drew his gun, Finn was faster, disarming him with a swift move that spoke of experience. The two men grappled briefly before Finn gained the upper hand, pinning Wade face down in the dirt. Samuel and Jacob appeared from the barn, rifles ready, as Finn hauled Wade to his feet. Beatrice couldn't hold back any longer. Setting Clara in her cradle, she rushed outside, reaching the porch just as Finn was tying Wade's hands behind his back. "You have no right to keep my wife from me," Wade was saying, blood trickling from his split lip. "Ex-wife," Finn corrected coldly. "And she's not property to be claimed." "Beatrice," Wade called, his tone shifting to the pleading one she knew well. "Baby, tell them there's been a misunderstanding. Tell them you want to come home." She stepped off the porch, standing tall despite her racing heart. "My home is here now, Wade. With people who respect me." Wade's face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful whore. After everything I gave you." "Enough," Finn cut him off, tightening the ropes. "Samuel, ride into town and fetch the sheriff. Tell him we've got a man here threatening a woman and child." As Samuel mounted his horse, Wade struggled against his bonds. "This isn't over. You think you can steal another man's wife and get away with it?" "No one stole me," Beatrice said firmly. "I chose to leave. I chose freedom over fear." Wade spat at her feet. "You chose to be his whore instead of my wife." Before Beatrice could respond, Finn's fist connected with Wade's jaw, sending him sprawling. "That's no way to talk to a lady," he said mildly, though his eyes blazed. "Jacob, put him in the storage shed until the sheriff arrives. And gag him if he can't mind his language." As Jacob dragged the cursing Wade away, Finn turned to Beatrice. "Are you all right?" She nodded, though she was trembling slightly. "I never thought I'd have the courage to face him again." "You're the bravest person I know," Finn said simply. The admiration in his eyes warmed something deep inside her. Sheriff Mills arrived 2 hours later, a gruff man with a gray mustache and tired eyes that had seen too much of humanity's darker side. He listened to Beatrice's account of her marriage and escape, examined the divorce papers she had carefully preserved, and took statements from Finn and the Hayes brothers about Wade's threats. "I'll take him back to town," the sheriff finally said. "Keep him locked up for threatening you with that gun. Judge comes through next week, he can decide what to do with him." "Will that be enough?" Beatrice asked anxiously. "He'll just come back when he's released." Sheriff Mills scratched his chin thoughtfully. "Well now? That divorce paper says he's not to come within 50 miles of you, doesn't it? Judge Parker takes a dim view of men who disobey court orders. Might be Mr. Porter here finds himself facing some time in the territorial prison." Relief washed over Beatrice as the sheriff led a sullen Wade to his horse. Finn stood beside her, a solid presence as they watched the two men ride away. "It's over," he said quietly. "Is it?" Beatrice wasn't so sure. "Men like Wade don't give up easily." "No," Finn agreed. "But they do understand consequences eventually." He turned to face her fully. "Whatever happens, you don't have to face it alone anymore." The sincerity in his voice made her heart swell. "Thank you. For everything." That evening, After Clara was asleep, Beatrice found Finn on the porch, watching the stars come out. She sat beside him on the wooden bench, drawing her shawl tighter against the cooling night air. "I've been thinking," she said after a comfortable silence, "about what happens next." Finn glanced at her, his expression carefully neutral. "And what have you decided?" "I'm not sure yet." She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Clara and I can't impose on your kindness forever." "You're not imposing," he said immediately. "I told you before this is your home for as long as you want it to be." Beatrice studied his profile in the fading light. "Why did you stop that day? On the road, when you found me?" The question seemed to surprise him. Couldn't just leave a woman and baby standing there in the middle of nowhere. Many would have. Finn was quiet for a moment. "My sister," he finally said. "She married young to a man none of us trusted. When she tried to leave him 3 years later, no one helped her. She died trying to escape." His voice was tight with old pain. "I wasn't there. I was already out west. But I swore if I ever saw someone in need like that, I wouldn't look away." Beatrice's heart ached for him. Without thinking, she reached for his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "I'm sorry about your sister." "Me too." He looked down at their joined hands. "When I saw you standing there with Clara, looking so determined even though you were clearly afraid, I couldn't just drive by." "I'm glad you didn't," she whispered. Finn's thumb traced gentle circles on the back of her hand. "Me too." They sat in companionable silence as the stars multiplied overhead. Beatrice felt a sense of peace settle over her, deeper than anything she'd experienced in years. Here, with Finn, she felt safe, respected, valued. "I want to stay," she said suddenly. "Here at the ranch. With you." Finn turned to face her, hope dawning in his eyes. "As my housekeeper?" Beatrice smiled, gathering her courage. "Not only that. Not if you don't want it to be just that." His free hand came up to gently touch her cheek. "Beatrice, I've been falling in love with you since the moment you climbed into my wagon with your head held high despite everything you'd been through. But I didn't want to pressure you, not after what you've endured." "I know," she said softly. "That's one of the reasons I love you too." Finn's smile was brighter than all the stars above them. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers in a kiss that felt like coming home after a long journey. When they parted, Beatrice rested her forehead against his. "I want Clara to grow up here, with room to run and animals to love and—" she hesitated, then continued, "and a father who will treasure her as she deserves." "Nothing would make me happier," Finn replied, his voice rough with emotion. "I already love her like she's my own. And she adores you," Beatrice said with a smile. "She lights up whenever you enter a room." Finn kissed her again, more confidently this time. "We'll take things at whatever pace you're comfortable with. No rush." "Thank you for understanding," she whispered against his lips. They stayed on the porch until the night grew too cold, talking about their hopes for the future, making plans for the ranch, for Clara, for themselves. When they finally went inside, Finn walked her to her door, kissing her goodnight with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. "Sweet dreams, Beatrice," he murmured. "They will be," she replied, "now that I know I'm home to stay." The next morning, Beatrice woke to the sound of Clara babbling happily in her crib. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, promising a beautiful day. As she dressed her daughter, Beatrice hummed a cheerful tune, her heart lighter than it had been in years. Downstairs, she found Finn already at the stove, attempting to make breakfast. His look of concentration as he cracked eggs into a bowl made her laugh. "Need some help?" she offered, settling Clara in her high chair. "Please," he said with a grin. "Before I burn down our home." "Our home." The words sent a thrill through her. Beatrice stepped beside him, taking the spatula from his hand, their fingers brushing in a touch that was now filled with promise. In the weeks that followed, life at the ranch settled into a new rhythm. Wade Porter was sentenced to 2 years in the territorial prison for violating the divorce decree and threatening Finn with a weapon. The news brought Beatrice a sense of security she hadn't felt since before her marriage. Finn courted her properly, despite the fact that they lived under the same roof. He brought her wildflowers picked from the meadow, carved toys for Clara, and took them on picnics by the stream. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch, planning their future together while Clara slept peacefully inside. 3 months after Wade's appearance at the ranch, On a perfect autumn day with golden leaves swirling around them, Finn asked Beatrice to marry him. They stood by the stream, Clara toddling nearby, chasing butterflies. "I know it might be too soon," he said, holding out a simple gold band. "And I'll wait as long as you need. But I want us to be a family in every way." Tears of joy filled Beatrice's eyes as she held out her hand. "It's not too soon. Not when you're sure." "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," Finn replied, sliding the ring onto her finger. They were married the following month in Ruby City's small church, with Mrs. Winters, Sheriff Mills, and the Hayes brothers as witnesses. Clara, now walking steadily, scattered flower petals with more enthusiasm than accuracy, making everyone laugh. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Finn kissed Beatrice with such tenderness that Mrs. Winters was seen dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. "You'll ride beside me from now on," Finn whispered against her lips, echoing the words that had changed her life that dusty day on the road. "Always," Beatrice promised. The years that followed were filled with the joys and challenges of building a life together. The ranch prospered under their combined efforts, with Beatrice keeping meticulous books and starting a small side business selling preserves and baked goods in Ruby City. Finn expanded their herd, built a larger barn, and added 2 rooms to the house. Clara grew into a spirited, confident girl who loved the ranch as much as her parents did. She learned to ride almost as soon as she could walk, following Finn everywhere, soaking up his patient lessons about horses, cattle, and the land. On Clara's 5th birthday, as they celebrated with a special dinner, Beatrice shared news that brought tears of joy to Finn's eyes. They would be welcoming a new addition to their family in the spring. "Are you happy?" she asked as they lay in bed that night, his hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach. "More than I ever thought possible," he replied, kissing her softly. "You gave me everything I never knew I needed: a family, love, purpose. You gave me safety when I needed it most," Beatrice said, running her fingers through his hair. "And then you gave me the strength to feel safe on my own." Their son, William, was born on a rainy April morning, with Clara peering anxiously over the midwife's shoulder, eager to meet her brother. Finn held Beatrice's hand throughout, his unwavering support giving her strength through the long labor. When he held his son for the first time, the look of wonder on Finn's face made all the pain worthwhile. "He's perfect," he whispered, gently touching the baby's tiny fingers. "Just like his mother. And stubborn like his father," Beatrice teased weakly, exhausted but radiant with happiness. William grew into a thoughtful boy with his father's steady nature and his mother's quick mind. 2 years later, they welcomed twin daughters, Emma and Sarah, completing their family and filling the ranch house with laughter and love. Through it all, the droughts that threatened their cattle, the winter when William fell ill with fever, the economic downturn that made every penny count, Finn and Beatrice faced each challenge together, their bond growing stronger with each passing year. On their 10th anniversary, after the children were asleep, they sat on the same porch bench where they had first admitted their feelings, looking out at the ranch that had flourished under their care. "Any regrets?" Finn asked, his arm around her shoulders. Beatrice leaned into his embrace, thinking of the frightened young woman she had been, standing on a dusty road with her baby on her hip and nothing but hope to sustain her. "Not a single one," she replied, turning her face up to his. "Every step, even the painful ones, led me to you, to this life we've built together." Finn kissed her, his love as strong and steady as it had been from the beginning. "Remember what I told you that first day?" Beatrice smiled against his lips. "You said I'd ride beside you from now on." "And you have," he said softly, "every step of the way." As the stars appeared overhead, just as they had on that night long ago, Beatrice thought about how a single act of kindness had changed the course of her life. How one man's decision to stop for a woman in trouble had led to a lifetime of love, family, and belonging. "Thank you for stopping that day," she whispered. Finn's arms tightened around her. "Best decision I ever made." They stayed on the porch late into the night, reminiscing about their journey together and planning for the years ahead. The ranch would go to their children someday, a legacy of love and perseverance built by a woman who had found the courage to seek a better life, and a man who had opened his heart and home when she needed it most. And when they finally went inside, hand in hand. They knew that whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, they would face them together just as they had from the moment she climbed into his wagon and began the journey that would lead her home.